Hello, I'm Sideshow back with more over.gg coverage of MLG Vegas, and this time fresh from his match just against Liquid, it's NRG's Seagull. And you have just come back from this match. It was the first one that you've won at this tournament because you lost just previously to Cloud9 yesterday, and you clutched it out in a 2-1 series. And some of those maps were incredibly close as well. So can you run us through that match from what you remember of it?
So let's see. King's Row, play a lot of Zarya. Got a lot of diva combos. It was fun. It's always enjoyable, like seeing the kill feed like instantly. It's like, okay, I got the Zarya ult. Let's see if Enigma can pull off like the combo with it, and then instantly I see like 5 kills. And I feel like it happened like 3 times in the match. I was like, thank God, because that match was close on that map. Nepal, that was a rough game. It wasn't like, I don't think we had great scrim results on that map. So for the most part, we're just like trying to still find our footing. So we start off with like Zarya, then I swapped to Mei. Mei actually worked really well on Village. That's probably the best map for Mei in Nepal. And then I tried out Roadhog for a little bit, never found much success with that. Even Zarya was rough. But moving on to the third map, we sort of like pushed that to the side. We're like, okay, just ignore Nepal. We always knew we sucked at it. Let's just move on to Dorado. We know we can play Dorado. Let's just focus on our game. Don't remember much of Dorado except that one time I was crouch spamming and ADing for my life and then barely held on defense. On offense, we had a decent amount of gravitons, I think. There's one through the roof, which was fun. It's always fun being on land for that type of situation because what ends up happening is, you don't have these situations online where I can literally just like look at my teammate's screen because we don't have a team house right now, right? So I'm like, all right, Seb, because that's Numlock, because our Winston player at the time. I was like, just give me eyes, and I just go underneath the church. I look straight up, and I'm just like, I just sat there AFK, and I just looked at his monitor, and I just hit Q the moment I saw it. I had no idea what was going on at the time. I was just like, all right, I guess it worked because we won the fight. But it was fun. I don't know. It was a really, really close series though. It could have gone either way if like any one of those team fights on King's Row or Dorado went bad. It was really close.
So before we break down the maps individually, what I want to ask is, coming into the game, I did an interview yesterday with Dummy, and it was definitely a serious tone he had. He was focusing much more on the challenges that you guys had faced, because you'd been in a bit of a slump, and he said that just now you were starting to get back into things. Yeah. So how were you feeling coming into today when you are facing elimination and you've got Liquid and then either FaZe and Cloud9? Were you still feeling positive, or was the challenge beginning to mount?
I mean, we're a team that plays well under pressure. I think that's kind of true for a lot of the players on this team and their history. It's not necessarily like, am I positive? It's like, I'm not about to be positive about my result, but positive, negativity doesn't matter. The goal is to win. Like, we have to win. So walking into that match, it was like, yeah, we have a lot of pressure to win, but like, there's no other option. We have to win this match. So that's what we did. That's sort of like the mentality walking into it anyway.
Okay, so on King's Row, we saw well, in general, you guys haven't been playing the same way as quite a lot of other teams. You've been throwing in different stuff in there. You certainly haven't been playing like the 4 tank most of the time that we've seen a lot of the North American teams play. On King's Row especially, you had this attack where Clockwork's running on Pharah quite a lot of the time. So what are your thoughts on these picks, particularly the ones that you were running? So Clockwork was running Pharah, and then he moved over to McCree when he was like in the streets phase. So what are your thoughts on that and how your team is using it when other teams aren't?
I mean, Team Liquid's a team that uses Pharah really well too. That's actually one of our biggest worries walking into this match, was like, Team Liquid is probably one of the other few teams of this tournament that really swaps to Pharah a lot. Envious used to be one of those teams, but they don't have Tailspin anymore, so I feel like they're kind of lacking that now. But I mean, the hero swaps are always going to be interesting in Overwatch. It comes down to like primarily what people are comfortable with. So, I mean, Clockwork, he wasn't super comfortable on Pharah before, but he put time into it because we realized that, let's say, I want to play Zarya because I was doing really successful on Zarya in the past few days. I was doing really well on it in scrims and stuff. It's like, okay, you probably want to have Zarya on mostly all of King's Row because it's one of Zarya's best maps. It's like, okay, if I'm playing mostly Zarya, which means essentially I'm a tank at that point, the entire map, he's going to have to play Pharah on the first point, and then that one DPS slot, because, I mean, how often are we playing triple tank? It's like pretty often, I'd say. Then he's going to have to swap into Bakuria 76. So, I don't know, it's like, you just have to pick. There's always going to be constraints on what people are comfortable with or what have people practiced, and you just have to work around that. Like, I would say we had me on Zarya a lot more than Enigma, and Enigma was putting a lot of time into Tracer, so he's the best Tracer player on the team. So it's like, okay, but he's our flex player. How do you put our flex player as Tracer, who's the best Tracer on the team, and still have, it's like you just kind of have to work around. It's like I go Zarya, he goes Tracer because he's the best Tracer player on the team, and I have a lot of practice on Zarya from World Cup where I played 2 weeks of nothing but Zarya. And it's like, can I get like as good as him on Tracer? Yeah. You give me like a month or 2 on Tracer, yeah, I could probably do as well as him maybe, but it's like you don't have that time, especially in this type of tournament. Like if I spend months, I can get as good at him, but why spend those months instead of just working around what I'm already good at and what he's already good at? It's faster and more efficient that way.
On Nepal, we saw you guys bring out the Mei a lot, and it worked to great effect. And it's something that I've seen you play quite a lot, and it's one of your better heroes, actually. Yeah. The Mei seems to be really good for you. But other teams have started to use it less and less, even though it was really good against the tank compositions. It used to be a staple of the previous patch around the Overwatch Open time, and it's kind of fallen out of favor. I've heard reasons cited like the Blizzard has been nerfed in terms of the time it takes to build and stuff like that. So what are your thoughts on the viability of Mei going into tank compositions?
I mean, Mei's always really good to tanks, but the problem is, like, some maps are just not good for Mei. Like, you run it, like, let's look at Complexity, for example. They're a team that's been having success against the quad tank comp running Mei, Tracers, and Yada, right? And that's sort of similar to the E-League Nano Reaper comps that we saw pop up, where they had, Mei, Reaper, Ana, but they just replaced the Reaper and the Ana with Tracer and Zen because a discorded bomb is one shot to tank, and it's really effective. And so, Mei's one of those heroes that it just kind of depends on the map and the position you're on. It's always going to be really good on defense, and I think you're exactly right where you kind of point out her ult charge was reduced, and that's why people aren't running her as often. I mean, what is it, there was a patch reduced by 25%. That was the blanket to all ults, so then hers specifically was nerfed by an additional 20% on top of that. So her ult charge was significantly reduced. Before, it was like you had it every single fight almost if you were a good Mei, and that's a little bit absurd. It really is. But I think she'll always be used on defense quite often because until Blizzard ever tweaks the whole, like, I can be invulnerable and still contest a point or payload thing, she has stalling power, and that makes it really effective. But on offense, it's like, I don't know, I think teams are definitely underusing her to some extent. Like, we see Complexity using her. I think she's being used more than, it's kind of how you could question sort of painted it, but I definitely know what you mean by it's like, there used to be one set, like, tank busting comps. Like it's like, cool, they have 3 or 4 tanks. All right, we're running Mei and we're running Reaper. We're just nanoing our Reaper last patch. We're just gonna run into them and just shred these tanks. But you no longer have that like one singular option anymore because tanks are just so good. So what do you do? And I'm not sure. I don't think the answer has been solved. I think in some ways, personally, I think Bastion is probably the bigger answer, but I don't think teams have experimented with that. I mean, realistically, the quad tank meta has only been around for like, what, a week and a half, 2 weeks at this point. So give teams time and they'll probably adapt to it, but more than likely Blizzard will tweak it because it's not very fun to play against anyway.
Is that something we're going to see from you? We've seen it in the past, the Pocket Bastion.
I hope so. I would actually love to play Bastion at some point. I mean, there's like, Bastion and Hanzo are my 2 pocket picks, I guess, and I think both of them are a lot stronger versus tanks than people think, especially Hanzo. I mean, it gets interesting because I think the only reason people, well, that's not the only reason, let's say a reason people pick Soldier with Ana in these comps, like, I mean, let's talk about like the traditional like meta comp or whatever. 3 tanks, Soldier, Ana, Lucio. I mean, you nano the Soldier and he's free, he wipes the team. Like, he's going to kill everyone with nano aimbot, and that's really good and effective, but better and better teams shut that down. Like, how often in today's games or NVS versus Complexity do you see Harry Hook just kill an entire team with aimbot? It doesn't happen super, super often. At least in this, I didn't actually watch the whole match, so I hope I just didn't like paint the completely wrong thing. But in general, I think Dragon is also really good versus these tanks, but people don't like. The ult rate of Hanzo is so ridiculous. On some maps like King's Row, we saw Time U play it very, very well. Like, they wiped half of King's Row instantly running Hanzo on the first point. It's like, I don't know, I think there's a lot of underused heroes right now. I think that's going to be true in almost every patch, and we'll see what happens.
And then on Dorado, you guys had a really good defense at the beginning portion, and you were able to hold it off at the second and be able to get there. So what I want to ask is, moving forward, for Cloud9 and FaZe, you're going to be facing one of those to potentially get into the playoffs. How realistic do you think it is that you'll actually be able to make it to the playoffs? Not
sure. It's going to be tough because if FaZe beats Cloud9, it'll be tough. I think our team has a harder matchup versus Cloud9 than FaZe. We've beaten FaZe previously online just like a week ago. I don't know. I think it's very realistic for us to beat FaZe. Cloud9, it's realistic to see. It's not necessarily realistic given previous results, but I think we've improved a lot from day one, and if we can show that versus Cloud9, it will be a really close match either way. So I'm not sure what to say about that. Otherwise, it's like playoffs, you just hope for the best, and like you can't, like, you don't really like put, as a player, you don't ever think about it like, oh, what are my chances? Like, you don't care about your chances, you play to win. You don't care about how bad your team is or how bad you are. You're here to show up and play. Like, I don't know, there's lots of underdogs in every single tournament. That's just how it goes.
For NRG, you guys had been having a couple of difficulties, and today you've looked a lot stronger. At times in those maps, you looked like you had really solved a lot of the problems. Do you think that that's a fair assessment of how you were playing today? Is this the new level that we should expect NRG to be at, where you're going to be able to contest these top teams?
It's always hard to say because we're a team that performs very well under pressure and very well LAN. So it's like, is this the new level of NRG? What happens if we go back to an online match and maybe we don't have the same level of intensity and pressure as we feel as in a tournament in front of all these spectators, and maybe we don't put up like the same like level of play? I mean, I don't know. I would say it's hard to say. Like, I think the biggest change to our gameplay didn't necessarily come from like, oh, we figured out something new or anything like that. It wasn't like some spark of ingenuity. It was literally just like, hey, let's play the heroes that we know we're good at, and then let's play around that we're having success with from day one and in scrims previously here while we're here at MLG. And then it went much better for us, and I think it's just a lot more simpler than that almost.
Okay, good luck in your game against FaZe or Cloud9 later on, and hopefully you'll make the playoffs.
I hope so too.